The NJSpotlight Roundtable series presents The Promise of Offshore Wind. This program was recorded February 17th, 2011, in Trenton, New Jersey. This program is sponsored by Atlantic Wind Connection, Garden State Offshore Energy, and GE Energy. In this episode, initial comments from New Jersey regulators and government officials. At the lectern with opening remarks is John Mooney, founding editor of NJSpotlight.
I want to thank you all for being here today. We've come a long way from the winter storm of the last scheduled one, and I really appreciate you guys coming back for this one. This is the second of what we hope will be many roundtable discussions that New Jersey Spotlight hopes to hold around key policy issues facing New Jersey, and obviously this one about wind energy. The last one was about solar energy, and we hope to get into other issues of education and healthcare. Obviously a lot going on in New Jersey right now, and we think it's well worth the discussion, and so we appreciate you being here. Being a longtime reporter, I'm usually on the other side of the mic and want to get things going, and I appreciate your patience, but I do want to call out a few folks who made this possible and who have made New Jersey Spotlight possible. First of all, I want to call out to the New Jersey Spotlight team who is here. There's a few of us here. Our managing editor, Lee Keogh, is in the back. Our publisher and the head of business operations, Kevin Harold. Chairman of our board, Ingrid Reed, many of you know, and our Chief Financial Officer, Sue Saldivari, who's also here on behalf of Community Foundation of New Jersey, who really, without their support, it wouldn't be possible for us to be doing this. And also, last but not least, certainly, and I'm smart enough to know on the business side of this, I want to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. And they, some of which are also on our panel. They are General Electric, Atlantic Wind Connection, and the Garden State Offshore Energy. So enough about us. I think these, we learned from our first event that these have can be really insightful, fruitful discussions. The way it's going to work is we're going to start it with a panel discussion. We also put some cards at each of your tables where if you have some questions you want to ask the panelists, write it down, wave it, one of us will pick it up. There also may be an opportunity where we pass around a mic and people can speak as well. The last of it, bathrooms are that direction for those. And let's get it going. Let me introduce now Tom Johnson, our energy writer extraordinaire, who's going to be doing the moderating of the panel. And I hand it to you, Tom.
Thank you. Well, we had a lot of angst a couple weeks ago when we canceled the event because of the snowstorm. As it turned out, it was worked out very well because a lot has happened in the intervening weeks. The state has come out with new offshore wind regulations. The federal government has designated New Jersey as one of the wind energy areas selection that should speed up the development of offshore wind, and Atlantic Wind Connection has made a filing with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to build a backbone transmission system off the eastern seaboard, the first phase of which will be off the New Jersey coast, if approved. We have a real distinguished list of panelists. We're going to let them speak for a few minutes. We'll start with the people from the state of New Jersey, and the first one who'll speak will be Kenneth Sheehan, Chief Counsel of the Board of Public Utilities, and he's the man who wrote the offshore wind regs, which all of you were awaiting, and will probably be subject to a lot of comment today. Ken?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I appreciate being here. As Tom indicated, my name is Ken Sheehan. My current role is as Chief Counsel for the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. As Tom indicated, in that role, one of my core functions was the development of the offshore wind rules that were promulgated by a special adoption on February 10th. For those of you following the process, and if you're not, I assume you're here for a free lunch. The legislature developed the Offshore Wind and Economic Development Act, and that was passed last summer. Under that act, the board was required to develop within 180 days rules to implement that process. I am delighted to indicate we made it with 4 days to spare. The legislature was designed with a number of purposes in mind. Optimize opportunities in New Jersey to take advantage of federal support for offshore wind, to support diversified sources of energy, and to require applicants to demonstrate net positive economic and environmental benefits to the state. Offshore wind has the potential to be extremely expensive. It also has the potential to be very beneficial to the state. The legislature made it clear that the board's obligation is to ensure that those two issues are balanced before ratepayer dollars are spent in the process. With that in mind, and as required by the Act, the board developed and promulgated New Jersey Administrative Code Title 14:8-6. At least that's where we think it'll be codified. It is currently with the Office of Administrative Law, and it is in effect. Currently, our best expectation is it will be published in the March 7th register. I do believe that the rules are available on the board's website for download, and if that's not the case, I'm going to do one of those dumb things and tell you my email address, and we'll get you a copy of the regs. Kenneth.Sheehan@bpu.state.nj.us. As noted, the rules went in through a special adoption. That was a legislative mandate, and accordingly, the usual provisions of the Administrative Procedures Act were not required to be followed. Instead, the board held stakeholder meetings around the state to allow interested parties to provide comment and an opportunity for input. Based upon that input, along with the legislative mandate, the board developed the rules. These rules have an 18-month shelf life. After that, the board is required to re-adopt the regulations. That process will be done in the normal Administrative Procedure Act methodology, and towards that end, it is expected that the board will begin the stakeholder process on this as soon as this summer. Those of you who have comments, concerns, would like to be involved in the process, I strongly encourage you to come out. We will have multiple stakeholder meetings. That process will hopefully develop draft changes to the rules. That being said, we think the rules are reasonably good and look forward to using the existing process as a framework on which we will work moving forward in the future.
Thanks, Ken. I believe the rules are also on your website, aren't they?
I hope so.
Yeah, I believe they are if you go onto the website of the Board of Public Utilities. Next will be Michele Siekerka. She's the point person in trying to drive green jobs in New Jersey for the administration, and we're happy to have her here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to give you a state of offshore wind, where we are currently in the state of New Jersey, and then what are we doing to send the market signals to really build the industry for New Jersey. Currently, New Jersey hosts 3 of 5 interim leases that are issued by the federal government so that there can be some exploration of the opportunities for wind in the Outer Continental Shelf. Those 3 interim leases are expected to yield 1,100 megawatts of energy. And those 3 projects right now are hosted by Garden State Offshore Energy, Fishermen's Energy of New Jersey, and NRG Blue Water Wind Energy of New Jersey. So that's interim. That's actually activity that's going on right now. I think what's equally exciting is that we have the opportunity to actually be the first state to have wings in the water, because we have a state project that is being hosted by Fishermen's Energy of New Jersey. By Fishermen's Energy of New Jersey, and they're going through a state permitting process right now that is on track to have that project in construction, hopefully early 2012. I'm looking over at Dan, who's smiling and hopefully nodding his head on that. We've also had unsolicited bid activity. This is where developers will put in a bid without a formal request for activity on our Outer Continental Shelf. So 700 megawatts, a project by Offshore MW. I know they're here today as well. And 1,100 megawatt alternative technology project by Pavilion Energy. And then what's interesting about that last project is they say that they will tie into the Atlantic Wind Connection, which is that backbone transmission line that was referenced. And that is also, as you heard right now, an application is into FERC for that. Lots of activity going on out in the water. But there's a lot going on land to support this as well, though. The Port of Paulsboro is currently under a major redevelopment in order to support this industry. So the Army Corps of Engineers, the permits have been received so that the work can begin at the port. And currently there's $65 million in construction contracts with the goal of, in 1 year, having that port ready, the platform ready to host a build-to-suit manufacturing facility. The goal here is, of course, to see the jobs come and support the industry from the manufacturing side. And in a moment, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Staying on what else is going on currently, though, was referenced that New Jersey is considered a wind energy area for the federal government smart from the start. And what that means is that there will be additional environmental analysis done by the federal government on what is already a very informed map of New Jersey and our outer continental shelf. In addition, any of our developers, when they submit for their projects, because they're in a wind energy area as designated by the federal government, their permitting process should be, and I'll say should be, slightly expedited because they're in that area. Last but not least, our call for nominations. This is the request by the federal government that actually makes a call out to the development world to say, come in and bid on permanent leases so that you could do projects in New Jersey. That's scheduled to go out within the next 10 days. It'll be filed in the Federal Register. So stay tuned on that Federal Register. Keep your eyes open. I know everyone's very excited about that. I want to talk for a moment very briefly about market signals and how we build the industry to support all this exciting activity. I heard last week up in Boston that what we need to do is government has to take on the externalities. We need to show that we're competitive, and I'm really proud to say New Jersey's doing that. We have a strategy and we have a very cohesive approach as a state toward this process. We have an interagency team where we're working with all our sister agencies, the Governor's Office, Lieutenant Governor's Office, EDA, BPU, DOT, DOL. It's fabulous. We're working on building a business registry where we're going to be able to say to all of the businesses who would be in the supply chain, come and register so that you can learn about the opportunities in the state of New Jersey for offshore wind. Our goal is homegrown vendors and great workforce development for the state. We want to show predictability. That's very important to the developers, and I think the state has done that very well in the Fisherman's Energy Project, and I challenge all of you to, or I invite all of you to have a discussion with Dan about how the state has been working with him on that project. Last but not least, the state has to be willing to pay a premium and do early investment, and as a state, we absolutely did that. We had a blue ribbon panel years ago. We invested millions of dollars in our ocean wind power ecological study, which helped to create that informed map that I talked about. BPU had issued rebates for the Met Towers, which does the studies out there. And I reference once again the development of Port of Paulsboro. So those are really strong market signals. New Jersey is an absolute leader in offshore wind. I'm really excited to see this industry get off the ground. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, and now we'll go to Timothy Lizura. He's at the Economic Development Authority, and they are going to be crucial in New Jersey's efforts to try to lure manufacturing green jobs to the state. Tim?
Thank you. For those who may not be familiar with the Economic Development Authority, our mission is to drive investment and create jobs in the state of New Jersey. We're a quasi-public organization with our own board of directors, about 150 employees, about $1 billion balance sheet. We have been working with our friends at DEP and BPU for many years with a honed look at how to capture the supply chain of the green energy industry in New Jersey. And we've developed a number of programs that are tailored specifically for that. The two that I wanted to make special note of today, one was included in the Offshore Wind Economic Development Act, and that is a very targeted tax credit program for companies that are willing to make an investment of at least $50 million in a facility in the Port of Paulsboro. I was going to try to avoid saying that after Michelle was saying it and getting me confused. The Port of Paulsboro. And if your company invests $50 million and has 300 new jobs in the state, we would be able to provide up to $100 million of tax credits based on the investment, effectively taking the risk out of making the capital and risk out of making an investment to supply this industry, specifically this offshore wind industry. Very simply, we're trying to attract major component parts of the offshore wind investment, whether it be turbines, whether it be cables, whether it be blades, what have you. We want to be able to leverage the dollars we're putting on the table on this side of the shop to make sure that the jobs that are going to make those investments happen in New Jersey. The BPU rules specifically talk about that in order to receive these ORECs, you need to show that there's going to be a net benefit in New Jersey. This program includes a net benefit test as well. We want to make sure that after we put all of the state's resources on the table, that the state is going to be better off economically because of this industry that we're creating and help capturing. We also have programs for smaller companies. We working with BPU, we have a program called the Clean Energy Manufacturing Fund, specifically designated to say if you're in the clean energy industry supply chain, and this is broader than offshore wind, but certainly includes offshore wind and onshore wind. It includes solar and energy efficiency and a number of other green technologies. We can provide you up to $3.3 million to start up that line in New Jersey. MX Solar has taken or is taking advantage of that in Somerset as we speak, starting a line of production of solar panels. I want the same thing when it comes to gearboxes and switchgear and everything else that comes into these windmills, and they can take advantage of the $3.3 million of funding. Of that $3.3 million, 1.3 eventually becomes a grant if you keep up your end of the bargain. The other $2 million becomes a no-interest loan. I mean, and with a very long, patient repayment. So it is the risk capital that companies need to set up operations. We then have the whole tool chest of programs that the EDA uses to attract everything from service companies to manufacturing companies in all lines. We will bring those to bear when it comes to offshore wind. We work extraordinarily close with the Lieutenant Governor's office in meeting with companies when they're about to decide whether or not they want to locate in New Jersey. We go out to the Lieutenant Governor or the Lieutenant Governor's office and we sit with them and say, listen, this is what New Jersey is going to do. This is why New Jersey is a great place to do business today. The ability to help set up an operation, the ability to sell into a marketplace, to me, makes this a great proposition. And I'm happy to be here for any questions to answer.
Thanks, Tim.
We hope you enjoyed this program from NJ Spotlight. If you have comments or suggestions, please email them to info@njspotlight.com. NJ Spotlight, where issues matter, on the web at njspotlight.com. For everyone at NJ Spotlight, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.